I am Serena, a 27-year-old woman. I just got married recently. Back home, my father and brother treated me terribly, but it wasn't just me. My mother also suffered at their hands. We women were treated like slaves. If my father or brother commanded something, we had to act immediately. We'd be scolded for being slow if we didn't move fast enough. It was like this since I was little.
Why are you so slow? Just get it done already.
Yes, Dad.
You can't even do this much and you're in elementary school? What a disgrace. That's why women are useless.
Don't say that, Dad.
Shut up and be quiet. I don't want to be called Dad by you.
I've been doing chores since preschool, but it got worse once I started elementary school. While my father and brother relaxed, my mother and I were constantly busy. Whenever they wanted a drink, we had to bring it right away. Even in the depth of winter, if they wanted ice cream, we had to go out to the convenience store in the cold. So my mother and I were always exhausted. My mother felt sorry for me and cried all the time.
I'm sorry. It's because I'm weak that they treat you like this, Serena.
No, Mom.
Serena, you have to leave this house someday. Stand on your own 2 feet and run away from your dad and brother.
But what about you, Mom?
I'll be fine, as long as you're happy, Serena.
When I reached 10th grade, I thought about going to college, but my father said women didn't need education. He had a very old-fashioned mindset, thinking a high school diploma was enough for a woman. But I was in college prep school and all my friends were planning on going to college. I loved studying and I was determined to go to college. Despite this, my father wouldn't allow it. But at that time, my mother stood up against my father. I'd never seen her so determined.
She excels at her studies. That's why I'm going to let her go to college. What? Are you challenging me? How many times do I have to say that women don't need an education? What good will it do when all she'll be doing is cooking once she's married?
An education will never go to waste. It'll come in handy even after she's married and has kids.
Then do what you want, but I'm not paying for the tuition.
Fine, then I'll take care of it. My mother had some savings and she used it to support my college education. I got accepted into my first choice university, a private one. I felt guilty about the expense, but thanks to that, I met my husband. I had always been afraid of men, but he changed that for me. He was so kind when we met at our college club. He was always cheerful and could make anyone laugh. Having grown up oppressed by my father and brother, for the first time, I felt something positive towards a man. I started to think that I wouldn't mind dating someone like him, but I couldn't bring myself to confess and I kept my feelings hidden. In the end, we didn't date during our college years. After graduation, I ran into him at a reunion. He had changed a lot and had become a sophisticated city man. My family home was in New York, but in a rural area, and I had lived in an apartment during my university years. After graduation, I had been working in Manhattan where I was known as Plain Jane at my company. I wasn't sure if a plain Jane like me was suitable to be with him, but he asked me to come over, so I did. We reminisced about our old club days and ended up dating. After a year and a half, he formally proposed, and that's how we got married. After creating my own family, I was worried about my mother back at my old home. I felt sick thinking she was still being abused by my father and brother. Hello, Mom, how are you doing these days?
I'm fine. More importantly, are you doing okay, Serena?
I'm fine, really. Danny helps out with the chores. He's probably even a better cook than me.
Oh, is that so? I guess he got that from his father, who's a chef, right?
Maybe. Don't worry about me, okay? And you need to take care of yourself, Mom.
Yes, I got it.
Mom said this in her usual kind voice, but somehow I had a bad feeling. I had the hunch she was in trouble, due to my father and brother's horrible treatment. They despised us for being women, but my mother in particular was targeted. It was because of the scar on her face. She had an accident before I was born, which left a prominent scar. My father would call it hideous and disgusting, so my mom always covered the right side of her face with her hair where the scar was. It was heartbreaking that my mother, who got injured defending my father, was being called ugly. It was clear my father didn't appreciate her at all. Even my brother was cruel, saying things like, "Don't come to the open house, you're disgusting." I thought those were things one should never say, even if they are family. One day my husband and I were enjoying a happy hour. In the heat of midsummer, we were sipping chilled beer while nibbling on snacks. Suddenly, our home doorbell rang. It was just before 9 p.m. and we wondered who it could be at such an hour. Stepping out with my husband, we found Mom standing there.
"Oh, Danny. Mother-in-law, what brings you here at this hour?"
"Could you lend me $20? I'm sorry for bothering you, Serena and Danny." $20 is fine, but what happened?"
I thought I'd head to a motel or something.
A motel? What are you planning to do there now? As long as I can get some sleep, that's enough. What? I was kicked out of the house by your dad and his lot. I don't have any money. I froze in shock. When I asked her to tell me more, the details were beyond horrific. After dinner that day, Mom had been doing the usual housework. That's when Dad and brother started demanding more alcohol and ice cream. So Mom left the house with just her coin purse and smartphone. But when she got home, the door was locked from the inside. Unlock the door, I brought the drinks and stuff.
Just leave it there. We don't need you anymore.
What?
Drop whatever you bought and disappear. A worthless wife like you.
And that left my mom completely lost. She had used up almost all of her coins and couldn't even afford a taxi. So she had to walk all the way to our house.
That's what happened? That's awful.
Maybe I'm just useless now.
Hey Serena, let's live together with your mother.
Really? Are you sure?
Yeah, I don't mind. We have extra rooms. She can use one.
But I can't be in the way of newlyweds.
It's all right. I consider you like my own mother.
Thank you. Oh, my mom burst into tears, sobbing. She must have been touched by my husband's kindness, something she was likely unaccustomed to. My husband, having lost his mother at a young age, was a hard worker raised by his chef father. He graduated from college on a scholarship, so he understands people's pain. Having such a husband, I realize how lucky I am. He was the polar opposite of my father and brother. From then on, we started our life as a three. Whenever we came home, Mom always had a hot meal ready for us. You don't have to go to all the trouble. Danny and I can do housework too.
It's all right. I want to do this.
Thank you, Mom.
I feel a bit guilty.
After a comforting home-cooked meal from Mom, I was relaxing when the doorbell rang. At the door were my father and older brother.
You're here after all. How dare you send me a text like that? What's with, I don't want to be with you anymore, he bellowed.
So what? I simply told you how I felt, she retorted.
Oh, you're pretty bold. When did you start acting so high and mighty, he sneered.
You were the one who told me to leave, right? So I'm saying, let's get a divorce, she shrugged.
Well, I don't really need an old lady like you around, but if we're divorcing, pay me alimony, he demanded.
Excuse me? My father was demanding alimony from my mother in case of a divorce. I wondered what had happened.
Isn't that young guy I saw you with your new boyfriend? That's cheating, isn't it? He accused.
No, it isn't, she responded.
Oh, you two seem pretty close, though.
We didn't do anything strange. I had no idea that my mother had been with a younger man. I started to panic. Was my mother really having an affair? If she was, it would be disadvantageous for her since she and my father were not yet divorced. If my father was right, she might get sued. So I glanced at my mother, but she just winked at me. It must mean everything will be okay.
You dirty, tainted old woman. You won't be able to survive on your own once we divorce. Ha ha! Go ahead. Pay me and live your pitiful life, he scorned.
I don't mind if we divorce. I have a job, she stated.
Huh?
The young man you saw me with is a business partner of mine. He's a very talented and wonderful person.
Job? But you've always been a housewife.
I've been working from home, even without a computer. A smartphone is all I need. I occasionally meet him for discussions.
So that was it.
So I have $50,000 in my bank. Even if I divorce you, there won't be any problem. My father was dumbfounded. My brother had the same shocked expression. Neither my father nor my brother knew my mother had been working. But I was the only one who knew. She had told me secretly. She had said to keep it a secret from Dad and my brother, probably fearing they would depend on her financially.
Oh, I see. Let's start over. Come back home.
My father said this as soon as he found out about the money, but my mother coldly replied, "Why would I? I'm not coming back. I'll divorce you."
Huh? Why? I'm offering to live with you.
Why are you so condescending? I'm not weak like before. I don't need someone like you, cheating man.
Eh?
At the words cheating man coming from my mother, my father seemed shocked. My brother standing next to him was also surprised. Didn't you say something to my business partner, Emma? She asked.
Well,
he's dating a woman younger than Serena. It's repulsive, downright disgusting.
No, you've got it all wrong. It's a misunderstanding.
What's there to misunderstand? Can you say the same after looking at this photo? My mother was showing a picture she had found on her phone. It was a picture of my father being cozy with a young woman named Emma. They seemed too close and their faces were almost touching. I found myself thinking how gross this old man was. It was shocking to think that this pervert was my father. But how did my mother find out about the connection between my father and Emma, one of her business associates? There was a reason. One day she had gone to a cafe for a face-to-face meeting with Emma. Though they also met online, they made a point to meet in person once a month. During that meeting, my mother noticed the ring on Emma's finger. Apparently, it looked exactly like one my mother had bought for herself years ago. So she complimented Emma on her ring. Emma replied, "Thank you, my boyfriend, an older gentleman, gave it to me. It's secondhand, but I love it because it's quite valuable." This made my mother suspect that my father might have given Emma the ring. This diamond and emerald ring was custom made for my mother, so there was no other like it in the world. Given that it was an original design, my mother suspected that my father had given it to his mistress, Emma. When she returned home and opened her jewelry box, she discovered the ring was indeed missing. That was when my mother was convinced. "So I'll be asking for compensation for the affair, and we're getting a divorce."
What? Who's going to do all the housework then?
"Really? You and your son can handle it, can't you?" Both my father and brother were hopeless at domestic chores. Being unable to do anything, they had dumped everything on us women. So they would be in trouble if my mother left. I couldn't help wondering why they had chased my mother out in the first place. That's when I decided to intervene. "If you're going to be in trouble without Mom, why did you chase her away in the first place?"
That was just to spite the mistress.
"What?
I just wanted the other woman to suffer. I'm not the bad guy here."
You're still saying that? You're the one who cheated. You're the worst. So disgusting. I had never been able to stand up to my father or brother before, but things are different now. I had a strong ally in my husband, and my mother had become stronger. I had to become stronger too to protect myself, my husband, and my mother. Feeling this way naturally, I was able to stand up to my father. My brother was crying and whining, saying he didn't know what to do next. Apparently, he can't even make an omelet. The only dishes he could make were bacon and eggs and salad. I wondered if those even counted as cooking. If they were so incapable of cooking, they could just live on instant ramen for the rest of their lives. My mother wasn't a housekeeper or a slave. Why should she have to come home cheerfully after being cheated on? My father and brother were out of their minds, I could tell. They couldn't hold a proper conversation. "Well then, since it's decided we need to get prepared, I have to find a good lawyer."
Hold on.
I don't care anymore. I'm definitely getting a divorce, be it mediation or a trial, it doesn't matter. I've suffered emotional distress from you, and I might be able to get a lot of compensation money.
No way, I don't want that.
My brother was smirking at this point. Even if a divorce occurs, the parent-child relationship won't end. So he said he would still be able to inherit when our mother passed away, but it didn't turn out that way. "Gaston, I'm not leaving you any inheritance. After all, you've been so insulting towards me. I won't let someone like that inherit anything. Did you know? If I specify in my will, I can prevent the distribution of my assets to you." Once again, my brother's eyes widened in surprise. It seemed he never thought his constant insults could backfire this badly. He probably didn't realize that this was the outcome of heaping profound insults on the person from whom he was to inherit. He cried out loud, almost too loudly. We lived in an apartment and his cries echoed down the hallways. I thought it might disturb the neighbors. A man from next door, who looked kind of scary, whom we tried not to interact with, came out due to the noise. He yelled at my father and brother, and they scampered off like they were running for their lives. Then, my mother divorced my father. It was a tough battle, but she managed to secure a hefty compensation. She cut off all ties with Emma, my father's mistress. After that, my father seemed totally downcast. My brother, too, upon realizing he won't inherit anything, spent every day in gloom. My father's work suffered, and he was gradually pushed into less significant roles. Finally, he voluntarily quit. My brother, who was a freelancer, couldn't make ends meet with his income alone. He reached out to me for help, but I ignored him. Of course, I blocked his calls and messages. After that, my mother moved to a different apartment. She said she felt guilty staying with us. My husband felt lonely, but I thought some distance might be a good thing. Even now, we three occasionally have dinner together, and it's truly enjoyable. But soon, we will become 4. That's because I am pregnant. I have no intention of letting my child meet their grandfather. I can't bear the thought of letting such a disgusting man hold my child. From now on, for my husband, my mother, and my child, I plan to become a stronger woman.
I'm Emma, and I'm 29 years old this year. My husband Jake is the same age. We've been married for 3 years. We have occasional quarrels, but we've always respected each other and got along. Both my husband and I work full-time. We were quite content with our jobs, but as our 3rd wedding anniversary was approaching, we started to consider having children. I've decided to get married. Then, out of the blue, my brother suddenly announced, Not only I, but also my parents were taken aback by the sudden news. My brother David is 35. He works at a reputable company and is a sincere and kind older brother I'm proud of. However, he had never mentioned having a girlfriend before. Everyone was astonished when my brother, who has always been somewhat detached from the opposite sex, suddenly announced his own intention to marry. As we dug deeper into the story, we learned that his girlfriend of 6 months was pregnant, and they had decided to marry quickly. What's she like? She's lively and forthright. Well, since David is more of a laid-back type, maybe someone like her would be a much better match, our mother said with a chuckle, and our father nodded with a wry smile. Despite the surprise of a shotgun wedding, it was delightful news. They had already met her parents, and they asked us to meet her family soon. Can I come too? Of course. I'd appreciate it if you and Jake could come. David often visited my husband and me because they got along so well. In fact, I think he enjoyed spending time with my husband more than me. I think Jake will be happy too. Congratulations on your wedding, brother. Thanks, David responded, blushing slightly as he smiled. His happiness seemed infectious, and I felt joy too. Then came the day of meeting with the bride's family. We, my parents and us, a couple, were waiting in the hotel lobby. Sorry to keep you waiting. David arrived a little after the agreed-upon time, looking a bit flustered. A few minutes later, David's girlfriend and her parents arrived. Her name was Misty, who I heard was 33, 2 years younger than my brother. In person, she looked even younger. Maybe it was because she was more beautiful and a bit flashier than I had imagined. My name is Misty. Nice to meet you, she said in a slightly nasal voice. Hearing her voice, my husband exclaimed, Huh? What's the matter?
No, it's nothing,
he replied after some thought, shaking his head. Despite his odd behavior, the meeting went smoothly. My husband's unusual demeanor was worrisome, but I turned to Misty when addressed. Emma, right? Let's get along, shall we? Yes, I hope we can be good friends too. With her warm smile, I found myself smiling back. Although I sensed something was off about my husband, I momentarily pushed that aside, relieved to see that my brother's wife-to-be seemed to be a pleasant person. However, I was soon to realize that my instinct about my husband was right. After their marriage registration, my brother announced they were planning to have a wedding ceremony. It was the fervent wish of his wife, he said. I understood their sentiment. It was a once-in-a-lifetime event. She was already pregnant, and my brother wanted to fulfill her wish, so they decided to hurry and hold the ceremony before her belly got too big. I was surprised when I heard they managed to secure a date for the ceremony a few months from now due to a cancellation. The couple decided to live in my brother's house, about an hour's drive from ours. One day, during a weekday off, the doorbell unexpectedly rang while I was home. Hello there. Misty? It was my brother's wife standing at the door. Aside from dropping off some items, she had never visited our house before. I came to visit. You're off today, aren't you? Leaving me bewildered, she boldly stepped into the house. I hurriedly followed her in, finding her curiously looking around the house. Is my brother? Of course, he's at work. It's a weekday. That wasn't the point of my question, but she started talking before I could clarify. I'm just bored at home. You must be bored too, being home alone. Hey, I'm thirsty. Can you make me some tea? Feeling awkward, I went to prepare some tea, but when I came back, she had closed the windows and turned on the air conditioning. Tea is not good during pregnancy, right? I'm sorry, I don't have any caffeine-free options at home. Only mineral water. Oh well, it can't be helped. Sorry. For some reason, I found myself apologizing as I handed her the mineral water. She sipped it, glancing around the room with a small smile on her face. What a small house. Excuse me? Hey, I heard you guys didn't have a wedding, right? I was taken aback by the abrupt change in topic. We got married almost 3 years ago, and yes, we never had a ceremony. When we were discussing a wedding after getting married, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Luckily, we hadn't made any reservations yet. We had a long discussion, including whether we should have a ceremony at all, and in the end, we decided not to. Neither of us was particular about having a wedding, and we agreed to save the money for our future home instead. We explained this to both sets of parents and appeased them by agreeing to have wedding photos taken. Well, we weren't in a position to have one when we got married, but you still haven't had one, right? We decided together. Well, I guess you have to say that, don't you? She let out a dramatic sigh, resting her cheek in her hand. There was a slight smirk on her face. Poor thing, not even having a wedding ceremony. She exaggeratedly declared that, not giving me a chance to retort. It's not that we couldn't have a wedding ceremony, but she didn't give me a chance to interject. So small a home and no wedding ceremony. Have you had kids yet? Well, truly pitiful. But what else could we expect looking at you? I thought I'd misheard. But after seeing my sister-in-law's mocking grin, I realized she indeed uttered those words. Indeed, compared to my sister-in-law, I wasn't especially beautiful. I wasn't gorgeous or cute, nothing to write home about. This was the first time anyone had belittled me to my face like this. After that, she often visited on my days off and kept belittling me. Looking at the glass in the kitchen, she'd comment, "Truly a mess, but I suppose it can't be helped if you're busy at work, can it?" And on days when I wasn't wearing makeup because I was off, "Maybe you should wear makeup even on your days off." Well, even with makeup, there's only so much you can do. Maybe that's why your husband doesn't see you as a woman. Every time she saw my actions, my home, my appearance, she'd laugh triumphantly and make snide comments. It wasn't outright ridicule, but she belittled me with the pretense of sympathy. She was my brother's wife, and their wedding was just around the corner. I felt like I shouldn't escalate things, so I didn't say anything to my brother or my husband. However, the stress of being ridiculed repeatedly was overwhelming, and my husband began to worry about me more and more. "You seem to have lost your appetite, and your complexion doesn't look good. Maybe you should see a doctor." My husband kept saying this, and although I pushed back at first, I finally gave in. I thought it was stress, but recently I've been feeling dizzy and my body won't accept food. I went to the hospital just in case, and I was in for a surprise. "What's going on? Suddenly calling everyone together like this?" My mother seemed uneasy because I had called my parents and my brother's family to our room. Looking at my mother's nervousness, my husband and I shared a small laugh. "Actually, I'm pregnant." The first thing I thought when the doctor mentioned the possibility of pregnancy was, "No way." I thought it was time to consider having children, but recently it was the last thing on my mind. What I thought was stress was actually morning sickness. Pregnant? Yes, I'm still in the early stages. "Emma!" Suddenly, my brother raised his voice and gave me and my husband next to me a strong hug. When I turned around in surprise, I saw that his eyes were filled with tears. "Congratulations! I'm so happy, as if it were happening to me." "Big brother?" Seeing my brother's reaction made me tear up as well. My parents joined in crying, and afterwards we all shared a laugh. As we were all talking happily as a family, I suddenly felt a gaze on me. Huh? When I turned towards the gaze and gasped, my sister-in-law was glaring at me with a scary expression.
You know, Misty.
After returning home, my husband started speaking with a hesitant look.
I feel like she was glaring at you with a scary look.
So, my husband also saw her face. Afterwards, when my brother spoke to my sister-in-law, she answered with a quickly constructed smile, so I thought I was the only one who saw it. Looking at my worried husband, I thought it might be better to keep quiet. Actually, ever since my brother got married, his wife often came over unannounced, and each time she continued to make snide remarks. As I choked on my words, recalling the emotions of those moments, my husband quietly listened. So I want to keep a distance for a while.
I think I should keep my distance too.
Yeah, but she might come over to our house all of a sudden. What should we do?
What about going back to your parents' house for a while?
My parents' house?
Yeah, you've been struggling with morning sickness. Can you commute to work from there? If you do that, I'll feel relieved knowing you're at your parents' house.
My husband reassured me, and I breathed a sigh of relief. We have no intention of telling my parents about this right now. I don't want to rain on the parade of my newlywed brother, and I don't want to blow this out of proportion. But right now, I can use my morning sickness as an excuse to return home.
Still, why is she attacking you so much?
I have no idea. The first time I met her was at the pre-wedding meeting. The next time I met her, she was like that, and I really don't understand why.
I feel like I've seen her before.
Huh? Where? My husband had reacted strangely when we first met her.
I can't be for certain.
Although he evades, he says he'd like to look into it if he can. A few days later, we were to learn a shocking truth. Back at my parents' house, my husband frequently visited, and there were no more attacks from my sister-in-law. It was peaceful. Just as my morning sickness was calming down and the wedding day arrived without a hitch. We were getting ready at home, later than my parents, who had left early. When we were about to leave, my sister-in-law called. "Ah, you've already prepared?" "Yes, we're about to head out. Sorry, we don't have a seat for you." "Huh?" "My family and friends are coming today. I'd be embarrassed if they thought you were my family, so don't come to the ceremony."
What?
"You might dress up, but you know, with a background like yours, expectations are low." She was laughing on the other end of the phone. I'm the star of the day, you understand that, right? Does my brother know about this? Of course. You can't say no to me. Understood. But I'd like to talk after the ceremony. I'll consider it. Give me the gift later, okay? She hung up after having her say. My husband was looking puzzled at me, standing in stunned silence. Misty said, "It would be embarrassing if I came to the wedding, so don't come." Tears started flowing as I spoke, unable to hold back.
Are you serious?
"But it's my brother's wedding and he agreed to it." As my husband comforted me by gently rubbing my back, he exhaled, as if he had made up his mind.
Let's investigate the facts and talk to David properly. David is not the kind of person who would tell you not to come to the wedding.
My husband seemed quite angry.
We also need to clarify that. It would be better for David as well.
I understand. Thank you. 1 week after the wedding, my sister-in-law came alone to the restaurant I had called her to. "Huh?" She seemed surprised not just to see me there. And it's understandable. It wasn't just my husband and me. My parents, my brother, and even her own parents were all there.
Why? I didn't hear anything. Is there something going on today?
Yes, you told me to hand over the gift, right?
Really? It was a joke. Did you need to go to this extent?
I have something to discuss before I hand it over. It seemed suspicious to her that no one else was speaking. Her gaze was frantically shifting around the room. Misty, you worked for Sunrise Systems before your marriage, didn't you?
And so what?
Why did you quit?
It's obvious, isn't it? I was getting married and having a baby. I thought my husband had accepted that. Why bring it up now?
Accepted? I didn't say anything about her quitting. But to suddenly quit just because she's pregnant without discussing it first? My brother sighed in exasperation.
But that's old news, right?
At that point, my husband chimed in. Actually, Sunrise Systems, where she worked, is a client of my company. They're almost like a subsidiary, so we get quite a bit of inside information.
What?
Seemingly at a loss for words, my sister-in-law fell silent as my husband spoke. I thought she looked familiar. She had an affair with a married supervisor at her workplace. Felt uncomfortable and quit, right? Weren't your parents aware of that as well? As he looked at my in-laws, they let out a deep sigh. We apologize. She cried and said she was forced into the relationship by her boss. We believed her. We're really sorry. We thought it was all in the past. With heads bowed deeply, my sister-in-law's parents apologized.
What the hell? I was forced by my boss. That's what I said. It's all in the past now.
Past? The sound of my brother's voice low as a rumble of thunder, my sister-in-law trembled. He sighed heavily and laid several photos out in front of everyone. How are you going to explain these? The photos showed my sister-in-law and a middle-aged man, arm in arm, entering a hotel together. I was shocked to hear from my sister and her husband after the wedding that your affair with your old boss is still ongoing. Within only a week, my brother had gathered a lot of evidence. Right after the wedding, we consulted with my brother about my sister-in-law, passing on all the information we had. We told him that we had been uninvited from the wedding, that she had been nasty to us long before that, and that she had quit her job due to an affair. My brother had been told by my sister-in-law that I wasn't at the wedding because I had severe morning sickness. My brother apologized for everything she did, even though he had done nothing wrong. When I asked him what he was going to do, he said he would look into it himself. And a week later, when my brother told me he was ready, I called my sister-in-law. My brother had called our parents and her parents here himself.
This...
Everyone knows. That's why we called her here. As my sister-in-law tried to snatch away the photos in panic, she froze in despair upon hearing those words. You've also been bullying my sister. Why? With a sullen look on her face, my sister-in-law muttered,
It's just, despite being so much less attractive than me, she looked so happy. Her family is so close-knit, too. She should be satisfied with that. But she even got pregnant. Well, I'm the one who should be the center of attention.
So that's why you didn't invite her to the wedding?
Of course. It's my wedding. It's strange to have someone else being congratulated.
Everyone was at a loss for words at the sight of my sister-in-law, who nonchalantly justified her actions. let's divorce.
No.
Do you think you have the right to say no?
But I have a baby. How are you going to take responsibility?
She stood up, placed her hands on her stomach, and shouted, "If it's my child, of course I'll continue to pay child support even after the divorce. If it's really my child." After that, my brother and his wife divorced. She put up quite a fuss, but given her actions leading to the divorce, it was clear she was at a disadvantage. No court proceedings were necessary. When she was told she'd be legally accountable for a reasonable sum of money if they went to court, she conceded for a smaller amount. After the child was born, a DNA test showed that my brother wasn't the father. "Figures," my brother said, looking a bit pained. Because the child was born within 300 days of the divorce, by law the child was considered to be David's, my brother. It's a bit of a hassle that parentage can't be denied without going through civil litigation. But with the DNA test results in hand, there's no need to worry. The ex-wife continued her relationship with her former boss unabashedly and was thoroughly chastised when the boss wife found out. Apparently, this was the second time the wife found out. The first was when she quit her job, and now again when she decided to divorce. The first time their parents had intervened, but after this incident, it seems she's been abandoned even by them. For some reason, the ex-wife has been contacting my brother for help, he mentioned in a tired voice. Nearly a year after that incident, the phone rang. "Hello?
What do you think you're doing?"
The ex-wife's shrill voice echoed in my ears. My husband looked at me in surprise as our child lay sleeping in the crib. The ex-sister-in-law seemed out of sorts, frantic.
"It's your fault for never picking up, no matter how many times I've called. You've made me miserable, so I'm going to make you miserable too," she screamed over and over.
"Your current situation is your own making."
"Shut up! I won't be satisfied until you've gone through the same. If you keep playing dead, I'll burn down this entire apartment."
I paled at the ex-wife's threats. My husband, who had been listening beside me, immediately reported it to the police. Then the ex-wife was arrested. The police arrived in time to prevent the arson, but since she couldn't get into our house, she had damaged our door and windows, seemingly caught in the act of vandalism. After that, fearing the ex-wife's stalking behavior, we decided to go ahead with our long-planned home build and moved there. We no longer live in the apartment the ex-wife knew about. That, at least, was a relief. We got busy with things like child rearing, but we're leading a lively and enjoyable life. My brother comes to visit and plays with our child. Apparently, my brother has someone he likes recently, and occasionally he consults with my husband and me, blushing a bit. "Let us meet her before you decide to get married this time, okay?" I joked, to which my brother responded with a wry smile, saying, "I'm counting on it."